Okay, let's unpack this. The source material we've gathered today presents, well, one of the most fascinating intellectual syntheses we've seen, I think.
It's definitely unique.
We are diving into ancient spiritual teachings, specifically this concept of a spiritual salvation army, and layering that doctrine directly onto modern neuroscientific frameworks.
It's highly unconventional, yeah. We're looking at what the sources call the Ruhani Incognito Salvation Army. And like you said, this isn't about, traditional religious conversion or even physical aid in the usual sense.
Right.
It's presented as a highly specialized kind of hidden rescue mission focused squarely on the soul.
And our mission today is really to extract the core insight here.
Yeah.
How is this spiritual path mapped as a process of neurospiritual rescue? That's the term they seem to use. The goal here is understanding how these ancient techniques are presented as a definitive, maybe even a fast track to achieving inner calm and profound self-mastery by, fundamentally rewiring the self.
And that core doctrine, it starts by defining the spiritual state that actually needs rescuing. They describe the soul as being trapped in the Maya ke daldal.
The swamp of illusion.
Exactly, the swamp of illusion. And what creates this swamp, well, according to the sources, it's the 5 great vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego.
Okay.
This whole deep dive really revolves around the techniques used to pull oneself out of that psychological quicksand, so to speak.
That analogy, though, the Salvation Army, it implies a real urgency, doesn't it? It sounds like a crisis.
Yeah.
Why frame spiritual decay with such intensity?
Because the source material doesn't treat these vices merely as, let's say, moral failings, not just bad habits. They treat them as a constant, ongoing physiological crisis. When the individual is stuck in that cycle of negativity, the swamp, the limbic system, our emotional control center, it becomes chronically hyperactive. We're talking about an internal state defined by stress hormones, specifically elevated cortisol and adrenaline. It creates this constant state of internal emergency.
So the spiritual traps laid by Maya, this illusion, are literally creating measurable chronic inflammation, maybe, and definitely chemical imbalance in the body.
That's the argument presented, yes.
So if the problem is framed as neurochemical, we need to connect those ancient spiritual vices to specific scientific dysfunctions they mention.
Right, let's look at that mapping they propose. Lust, which the sources actually name as the primary enemy.
The root cause.
The root cause, yeah. It's characterized as a dependency on the reward system. Think dopamine overdependence. You're constantly seeking that hit, which leads to, well, spiritual and emotional bankruptcy because the system just gets burned out.
That's a direct hijacking of the reward circuit then. Okay. What about anger?
Anger is maybe the most immediate link. Amygdala hyperactivity. That fight or flight response is just constantly on high alert. It creates an inability to respond rationally. You're just reacting all the time.
Makes sense. And greed.
Greed is related to lust in a way. It's reward addiction, but applied to material accumulation, maybe status. Just the inability to feel or say enough.
And the more subtle ones, like attachment, Mo, this is usually seen as dependency, right? But how does that translate into a neurochemical issue according to these sources?
Attachment, Mo, in this context, is framed as perhaps an oxytocin imbalance. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone.
Right.
When Mo is supposedly active, we inappropriately bond, relying on external transient factors, people, objects, status for our internal stability. If that external factor shifts or disappears,
The whole system collapses.
Exactly, the whole system collapses, leading to suffering. Big time.
And finally, the big one, ego. Ahankar. You mentioned this is linked to the default mode network, the DMN.
Yeah.
Why is the DMN seen as the seat of the ego here?
Well, the DMN is essentially the brain's autopilot network. It specializes in self-referential thought. What did I do yesterday? What will I do tomorrow? What do others think of me? That kind of inner monologue.
Okay.
If the DMN is overactive, which neuroimaging studies do suggest happens in highly self-involved or ruminative states, then the entire operating system gets hijacked by this I, me, mine narrative. That's the link they make.
So if the vices are causing this sympathetic nervous system overdrive and limbic chaos, the spiritual remedy must be designed to reverse that specifically.
Precisely. The practice, the yoga, the remembrance they talk about is designed to be a conscious inner detox, if you will. It activates the parasympathetic system.
The rest and digest mode.
Right. That system is essential for restoring neurotransmitter balance, achieving that core goal of calmness and higher emotional regulation. This is what they call the spiritual salvage process, stabilizing the internal chaos.
Okay, so If the battlefield is defined by chemical imbalance, how does the doctrine propose we actually train ourselves out of it? Let's shift from the neurochemical crisis to the training ground itself.
Yeah, the solution.
Because here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The source describes this training happening in a godly university designed for kingship. What kind of curriculum achieves this total self-mastery? It's quite a claim.
It is. And this university, it's defined as non-physical. It's a direct teaching platform, supposedly from the Supreme Soul. The curriculum isn't, calculus or history.
Right, not your standard university.
Not at all. It's about radical identity transformation. The whole goal is shifting the soul from the Ehaman and body consciousness to Dihayaviman, which is soul consciousness.
In a world that's so focused on, genetic markers, physical performance, everything material, that sounds like a total neurological paradigm shift.
Is this presented as equivalent to neuroplastic reprogramming? It is presented exactly like that. It's framed as the highest form of neuroplasticity. You are consciously dissolving old, deeply entrenched samskar.
Which are like habits or conditioning.
Yes, but maybe deeper. Defined here not just as habitual circuits, but as deep inherited or learned conditioning, even karmic imprints. And you're systematically forming new virtue circuits instead.
Wow.
The sources claim this training grants emotional sovereignty, hence the university for kingship idea, becoming the king of your own mind.
The teaching, I remember, also includes recognizing two fathers. The worldly father who gave the physical body, and the supreme father who gives spiritual knowledge, purity, liberation. Why is this distinction so crucial for the identity reprogramming part?
It seems to be about choosing the focus of your identity. Where do you anchor yourself? If we use that scientific analogy again, recognizing the Supreme Father is meant to create a new, intentional, spiritual identity network. One that overrides the reactive physical identity network, which is often driven by survival instincts, fear, the ego. It shifts our dominant thought patterns, the idea goes, from self-preservation mode to a more selfless creation mode, based on the stable foundation of the soul.
So, when a trainee, someone practicing this, achieves the Dehi Abhimani state, thinking, I am a soul separate from the body, what's the measurable shift in the brain supposed to be?
Well, the claim is that when we are stuck in Dehi Abhiman, body consciousness, our neural focus is anchored mainly in the sensory and motor cortexes. Areas dedicated to physical interaction, immediate reaction. It's inherently unstable, tied to the external world.
Right, always reacting.
But when you consciously practice the Dehi Abhimani state, that awareness, that focus shifts upward, towards the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for higher order regulation, planning, executive function, self-control.
That sounds like activating the ultimate brake pedal on the emotional system, the reactive system.
It's presented as the very foundation of observer consciousness. You create a separation, a space between the mind and body, which they say instantly increases detachment and focus. You're essentially activating the brain's higher regulating circuits, moving from being an unconscious reactor to a conscious regulator.
This transition then from Dehaman to Dihayaman, it sets up this inner conflict, this neuro war. How does that conflict manifest in, say, brainwave patterns? Is there a link made there?
Yes, there is. When the ego and the vices that Dihayaman state are activated, the brain is usually dominated by high beta waves. These are those fast, small, often disorganized frequencies associated with anxiety, stress, intense problem solving, being on edge.
Okay, yeah. Busy brain.
Very busy brain. And this high beta state is linked to driving that cortisol release we talked about earlier.
And the spiritual practice, the remembrance, provides the counter frequency.
Exactly. The consistent maintenance of humility and that spiritual remembrance allows the brain, supposedly, to deliberately shift into alpha and theta frequencies. Alpha waves are associated with deep relaxation, reflection,
More calm states.
much calmer, and theta waves are linked with deep meditation, insight, access to subconscious material. So the sources describe yoga here explicitly as a frequency shift meditation, a conscious effort to move the mind out of that stressed high beta state and into the peaceful alpha theta state.
Let's circle back to the primary enemy you mentioned, lust, Kamahajatru. The sources say conquering this vice is like victory over the world. What's the neurochemical mechanism proposed for that ultimate victory? It's easy to just label lust as dopamine pursuit, but how does the material avoid sounding like, overly simplistic spiritual reductionism?
That's a fair question. It seems to avoid reductionism by providing a holistic remedy. Lust addiction, as they frame it, doesn't just feel bad. It fundamentally degrades your ability to exert willpower because it overstimulates and then desensitizes the dopamine system. You need more and more for less effect.
Right, the tolerance effect.
Exactly. So the key isn't presented as mere abstinence, which might rely purely on already depleted willpower. It's a combined prescription. Celibacy plus divine love. That combination is key.
Why does that specific combination supposedly succeed where sheer willpower might fail?
Well, the idea is that celibacy conserves the neural resources and the mental energy that were being constantly spent on seeking that reward. It stops the drain.
Yeah.
Then divine love introduces an overwhelming, non-egoistic, internal source of fulfillment, something stable and self-generated. This combination is said to restore the critical dopamine-serotonin balance. Serotonin, the neurotransmitter often linked to contentment and well-being, starts to balance out the constant spiking urgency of dopamine pursuit.
Ah, I see.
By balancing these, you stabilize the emotional landscape and theoretically gain true, unshakable willpower, not just forced abstinence. That's the claim.
The teachings also describe continuous remembrance, Raja Yoga, as the fire of knowledge that destroys past emotional imprints that sins burn. That's a very dramatic metaphor. How is this continuous focused meditation thought to act like fire on those locked memory circuits?
Yeah, fire of knowledge is potent imagery. It's presented as the essence of, let's call it, neural cleansing. Those past emotional imprints, guilt, trauma, subconscious emotional baggage, they're seen as being stored energetically, like charged, highly interconnected circuits in the memory banks.
Okay.
Continuous deep concentration on purity and light, which is what Raja Yoga demands, is thought to generate high metabolic activity, focused energy in specific frontal brain regions associated with attention and higher consciousness.
Like focusing sunlight with a magnifying glass.
That's a good analogy. This intense focused energy acts like a high voltage charge, enabling the release or the burning of the emotional energy locked within those old subconscious memory loops, releasing the charge.
So the feeling people might report of mental lightness or karmic healing, that's the subjective experience of those old circuits discharging their emotional burden, becoming neutralized.
Precisely. You are, in theory, dissolving the neural basis of the past suffering by applying focused, positive, high-energy thought.
Okay, that brings us from the internal warfare and cleansing to external action, this mandate for incognito service. This spiritual salvation army operates, as the name suggests, without fanfare, through silent vibration seva. Why such a strong emphasis on quiet, unadvertised influence?
It seems the focus has shifted entirely from visible, potentially ego-driven charity or service to pure, internal, energetic broadcasting. The sources suggest that selfless, pure thoughts actually generate coherent frequencies, things that might even be measurable, or at least have a real effect.
And what's the scientific parallel they might draw for this vibration? Is there anything concrete?
Well, one might look at studies, for example, from places like the Heart Math Institute. They measure the electromagnetic field generated by the heart and brain.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, they show that pure, consistent feelings of compassion, sincere good wishes, essentially, pure thoughts create highly coherent frequencies that radiate outward. They can measurably alter electromagnetic fields, sometimes several meters away from the body.
Wow, okay.
So vibration seva is presented in this context as a real-world energetic influence done purely through the power of the mind, manasa.
So your pure thoughts are framed as essentially high vibration radiations, perhaps detectable in the brain's electromagnetic field via EEG, and this is the core of the service. Not just wishful thinking, but an active transmission.
Yes, that's the idea presented. The mandate, which is described as the Avyakt signal, the subtle signal, is to use the refined mental powers gained through yoga to consciously spread these waves of good wishes and pure feelings. The sources even suggest that when large groups engage in collective meditation based on these pure intentions, subtle shifts might be recorded in global magnetic resonance fields, although that's obviously a huge claim. But the core idea is the mind becomes a transmitter of benevolent energy.
Which makes the practical application, the dharana, incredibly important then. It's not just meditating for yourself, it's about actively recalibrating and transmitting. What are the 3 key steps the sources recommend for integrating this neurospiritual coherence into daily life?
They prescribe a pretty systematic 3-part daily structure. It seems designed for continuous neuroplastic reinforcement. First, there's Amrit Vela.
The early morning practice.
Right, the early morning practice, usually recommended around 4 a.m. It's a 20-minute concentrated focus on I am a soul. This is done when the brain is naturally transitioning, often from theta to alpha states, supposedly making it highly receptive to grounding and establishing that spiritual purity for the day.
That seems like a very intentional way to sort of front-load the prefrontal cortex, set the intention for the day.
It does seem designed that way. Second, during the daytime, the practice is active service, empowering every soul you interact with or even just think about with the light of the Supreme, with good wishes. This is the continuous active vibration seva, constantly centering the mind on selfless creation, sending out positive energy rather than just reacting to whatever comes your way.
And the nightly check-in. That sounds like it's about metacognition, being aware of your own thoughts.
Absolutely. The evening reflection mandates checking how long or how effectively you successfully remained in the Dhyabhimani state, that soul-conscious state during the day.
Kind of like reviewing the day's mental performance.
Exactly. This metacognitive self-assessment strengthens the awareness circuits. By auditing your thoughts and emotional responses, you are explicitly reinforcing the desired neural pathways and hopefully preventing relapse into that DMN-driven ego state.
Let's synthesize the final wisdom then, this blessing of Nishabudhi, which translates roughly to unwavering faith or intellectual conviction. The sources say this creates a victory state. How does faith connect to neurochemistry here?
Faith, Nishabudhi, is defined here as complete neurological trust. Not just blind faith, but a deep conviction. It's suggested this activates oxytocin, the trust and bonding hormone we mentioned earlier, which provides profound neurochemical stability. This leads to the constant internal experience of divine companionship, eliminating that underlying loneliness and anxiety that often fuel the vices. It's why the sources state, surrender is not escape, it's divine participation. It means you've centered your entire neural state around a feeling of total safety and trust.
That constant companionship idea is perfectly captured in the ultimate slogan they often repeat: remaining in one Father's company, making God the constant companion.
That is framed as the ultimate goal of attentional coherence. It means anchoring the mind, focusing it in one unwavering direction. When your mental energy isn't scattered across 1,000 worries or external attachments or desires, then stress, anxiety, and the vices naturally lose their power. The focus itself is the power.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us, for you listening? The spiritual doctrines we've examined here, they suggest that achieving liberation isn't just some abstract philosophical concept.
No, it's presented as directly measurable and achievable.
By mastering and systematically rewiring your own brain chemistry, shifting your fundamental identity from body to soul, and deliberately choosing your mental frequency, your state of being.
It essentially presents ancient wisdom as a practical manual for, you could say, neural self-editing and self-mastery. It really confirms the brain's profound capacity for plastic adaptation based purely on focused intention.
Okay, so here is a final provocative thought for you to mull over, something to take away from this deep dive. If pure thoughts, as these sources suggest, are potentially measurable high vibration radiations that can subtly influence even the global magnetic resonance, how might your own mental focus right now, in this very moment, whatever you're thinking about, be impacting the world around you, energetically speaking? It implies your thoughts are not just fleeting internal chatter. They are potentially a tangible, energetic force shaping your reality and maybe even the environment.
A profound connection to consider.
We'll leave you to reflect on that.
Shanti, Om Shanti. He's here, the beloved one has come. Shiv Baba, ocean of love. Touch, touch, Ja Baba aayenge. दिल से पुकारना अपने संस्कारों पर रोशनी ढलना बंद आँखों से महसूस करना उनका प्यार मन में बसना वो परम सत्या संसार वृत्त when he comes just close your eyes. Feel his love, feel the rise. Fill yourself with His peace tonight. Baba's drishti pure delight, उनकी आँखों में देख कर अपनी पहचान याद फिर. He's here, He's near. Baba's love is crystal clear. उनसे बातें करना, दिल से कहना, बाबा अब मैं पूरी हूँ, बस तेरा रहना.
उनकी मुस्कान में अपनी तकदीर लिख लेना, श्वासों श्वास में शिव की याद रहना.
Talk to Him, share your heart, He'll heal your soul, make you restart. जो भी दुख है सब समर्पित कर दे, दिल का बोझ बाबा के सामने रख दे, फिर उनकी शक्तियों से अपने को भर दे, और गोले मट से अपनी दुनिया बना ले. He's here, He's near. Baba's love removes every fear. Shanti, Shanti. बाबा के साथ मिलन का एहसास, मन से मन का मिलन अनंत उल्लास.
बाबा बाबा, शांति के सागर को हमने पाए, शांति के सागर को हमने पाए.
बंद आँखों से महसूस करना उनका प्यार, मन में बसाना वो परम सत्य संसार रुद्र.
When He comes, just close your eyes, feel His love, feel the rise.
Fill yourself with His peace tonight. Talk to Him, everything feels right. उनकी दृष्टि में खुद को समा लेना, अपनी रूह को नई ऊर्जा से भर लेना. He's